Have you ever wanted your own frozen bodyguard that could lay waste to any enemy in sight, even screens away? This build pumps nearly every necromancer buff possible into one single skeleton mage, and sets it loose to wreak havoc across monolith echoes or any boss that dares stand against you. It doesn't require any uniques to begin functioning, but can capitalize well on items such as Lich's Scorn, Death Rattle, and Apogee of Frozen Light. Welcome to the Maxroll channel. I'm your host, VisionGL, and this is my Roid Mage guide for Necromancer for Last Epoch Cycle 1.1. For skills, let's start with Summon Skeletal Mage, the focal point of the Roid Mage build. First take Cryomancers, and then Frost Lich. This ensures that the mage that you summon is always a Cryomancer. Next, go for Archmage. This makes it so we have only one mage to focus all of our buffs into. Grey Merchant gives our minion more crit multi, but more importantly, it gains 15% maximum health on crit, which it will always be critting thanks to Dreadshade. Finally, take Forbidden Arcana, which gives you 5% more damage for your skeleton mage per 25 max mana. Splintered Dominion and Gravetide will take your remaining points, giving your mage more projectiles and more flat damage. Dreadshade. First take Egoism. This makes sure that your mage's attacks always crit. Lone Watcher next, to convert the Dreadshade health drain into increased damage taken instead. Grim Fate gives your mage more damage while the Dreadshade's attached. Blind Fury causes your mage to cast faster while it's attached. As the finishing touch, Flesh Harvest ensures that if your mage ever drops below maximum health, these buffs get stronger. Next, let's look at Infernal Shade. For Infernal Shade, take Devour in Flames, so you can place it on your minions. Burn Trail gives your minion haste while the Infernal Shade's attached. And Soulfire makes sure the Infernal Shade has unlimited duration on minions. Manic Pyre is your steroid for the mage, giving a stacking move speed, attack speed, and cast speed buff. This caps at 72% and causes your mage to move and attack much faster. We take Brimstone for a bit of utility. Any enemy that swarms your mage while it has Infernal Shade will be slowed. For Chaos Bolts, we rush the Revolution node. This gives your mage an additional form of scaling based on your max mana, giving it 1 flat damage per 20 max mana. In addition to this, it gives cast speed. Scatter gives your Chaos Bolts Fear Chance, which allows you to CC enemies at will. Reaper of Mayhem allows us to proc an unspec'd harvest when our Chaos Bolts hit. The percent chance is based on your dexterity. A dexterity prefix on one of your rings is more than enough chance. This allows us to take advantage of the Apogee of Frozen Light's passive. Finally, let's look at Transplant, our ultimate utility skill. Grab Bone Armor and Apostasy for Bone Armor duration. This is Necromancer's primary source of damage reduction. Make sure you transplant to keep up this buff. Acolyte's Fervor gives you 3 seconds of haste and frenzy every time you transplant, giving you more move speed and cast speed. We take Squeamish and Thanatophobia, so your transplant also fears on arrival and departure. This combined with the fear and chaos bolts will make sure the enemies are always scattering and your mage can pick them off one by one. We take Simulacrum for the Bone Minion. When the Bone Minion dies, you'll get a stack of Frozen Vengeance for your Apogee, allowing you to proc the more damage when you harvest off Chaos Bolts. Fleeting Form gives your transplant more cooldown recovery and a faster cast speed, so you can use it more often and faster. For passives, let's start with the Acolyte tree. Forbidden Knowledge and Unnatural Preservation give you a nice boost to your resistances. Dark Rituals for more minion cast speed, which is important for your mage. Later on, we'll come back to this tree for Soul Aegis, giving your minion 3 armor per player level. In the Necromancer tree, our first objective is to rush for Dreadshade. Use Risen Army for increased minion damage and cast speed. Mortal Tether gives your minion increased health to ensure that it survives any one-shots. Aegis Fall gives your minion Armor Shred chance, which helps it stack damage against tanky single targets. Frantic Summons offers more cast speed for your minion. Tyrant gives a lot of increased health, which will help boost your health pool, which is later converted to ward. Moonlight Pyre is a great source of flat damage for your mage. Finally, at the top of the tree, we take Blades of the Forlorn. This gives your mage more crit multi, chill chance, and increased minion cold damage. For Warlock, we take an early 5 points after picking up Dreadshade. and Soul Stealer. This gives us increased mana regen, but also allows us to specialize into Chaos Bolts. Later on, we revisit this tree for Occultist's Mind, giving us intelligence, but more importantly, the 5-point threshold bonus, giving us 1 mana per intelligence. This further stacks our mana pool and allows the mage to scale harder. In the Lich tree, we take Apocrypha for more mana regen, but also more intelligence. For gear, let's start by talking about what possible uniques this build is going to use. You don't need any uniques for this build to work, but this build capitalizes very well when you do get certain uniques. The first of these being Death Rattle, which gives your minion an incredible amount of crit multi and really scales up your minion's damage considering it's always doing crits. Lich's Scorn is a set item that can drop from the Blood, Frost, and Death timeline boss. This gives you flat cold damage with spells and attacks, but also gives your mage cold penetration per your intelligence. This scales up very nicely into late game by hitting through enemy resistances. Finally, there's Apogee of Frozen Light, which gives your mage +3 skill levels. This is really nice to pick up the last stray points we need for scaling. There's a more damage buff on here and an additional more damage buff you can get by hitting enemies with a melee attack, which we're getting with Chaos Bolts. Defense-wise, uniques that are useful. Ribbons of Blood makes it so your minion can't be crit. It also has % increased health scaling, which helps you. And then finally, this build is a low life build. Necromancer has a hard time with sustain, so we choose to go low life, so we always have a regenerating Shield of Ward. This requires having Exsanguinous, Last Steps of the Living, and a pair of gloves with an experimental missing health gained as a ward per second. Until you reach these 3 defensive items, you just run health and endurance. As soon as you get 2 out of 3 of these, you can swap to low life, and then low life just gets further buffed from there when you get the 3rd piece. Important stats to look out for are always intelligence. You want to scale your intelligence. It gives you minion health, it gives you minion damage, it gives you cold penetration for your minion, it gives you ward retention. Intelligence is a very useful jack of all trades stat which buffs you all around. After intelligence, you want to grab mana. This is your mage's long-term way of scaling, building up your own mana pool. And then to complement your ward gained is missing health. You want to get as much health as possible. Hybrid health, increased health, flat health where you can fit it in. You want enough crit avoidance to cap out after getting your empowered Reign of Dragons timeline blessing, and enough resistance to cover what you're missing to make sure you reach cap. Overall, the gearing of this build is simple. Stack intelligence, stack health, replace your items with the suggested uniques one by one, and watch your mage come online.
My shadow will cover this world once more. My vengeance will be paid in ash. This hate, this despair, oblivion burns within me. This world burns. Do you deny it? Do you think my defeat changes